Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Marty, if you would.
Mary Jo Rosmanowski. Here. Mary Jo Radcliffe.
Here.
Tom Epps.
Here.
Troy Webb. Nick Halstead.
Here.
Ann Deemer. Here. Brad Dobbs.
Here. And has the meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
I am going to move to bring up items 5.7 as angel funds and school supplies because Ms. Paz is here, and 6.1 because our art department has joined us here.
Second.
The motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. So do you want to introduce 5.7 or jump right to Melissa?
Sure, I will. So the reason that you're seeing this on the agenda, it's angel funds and school supplies. I'm going to talk about one part of it, but I'm going to tee up Melissa first. Melissa shared an idea last fall, and it was one of those that we agreed quickly that was a good thought, but it didn't need action right away. And now it's like, oh, it's March, and so it's time to take some action. So I'm going to let her introduce the school supply piece of it, and then I'll follow up with how it relates to the angel fund. So thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Plaza, and I've been teaching kindergarten for 10 years. 8 of those years have been here in Black River Falls at 4th Street. Let's see, just kind of reiterates what you said, that we've been in contact. So I wanted to advocate for school supply equity at 4th Street, and hopefully we'll be able to add Red Creek as well and get somebody to kind of take the reins for that building. At the elementary level, high quality school supplies are an absolute necessity, while our young learners are literally learning how to use these supplies correctly and successfully. So basically, you can't learn to cut if your scissors are dull and don't actually cut paper. So while school supply shopping can be fun for some families, for others it can be extremely stressful and cause financial hardships. Research has shown that students who come to school unprepared can experience social and emotional challenges in addition to putting them at a disadvantage for learning. This initiative will ensure that every student has what they need to be successful. So I've asked each grade level at 4th Street to make 2 lists. One is school supply list that has specific necessities that the school would buy in bulk, and one list that the parents will still need to provide. For example, in kindergarten, our families will still provide a backpack, a rest towel, water bottle, change of clothes, facial tissues, and snacks. So for each student, the school will supply a plastic pencil box, 2 boxes of Crayola crayons, a pair of Fisker scissors, spiral notebooks, 2 large pink pearl erasers, Ticonderoga pencils, and 4 large glue sticks. So we also still have our Feeling Generous list for families who are willing and able to purchase extras like Play-Doh and Ziploc bags, laminating sheets, things like that. And based on parent feedback, Dr. Severson has also suggested that the district provide disinfecting wipes and hand sanitizer for each classroom as well. Providing these supplies will also make the August open house easier for teachers. We will have all of the essentials ready to go. We would also not have to wonder if each student brought everything they need, and if they didn't, figure out who is missing what and then provide it for them out of our own pockets. Additionally, during open house, teachers can focus on meeting our new students and their families, and then families can focus on how to best support their students throughout the upcoming school year. I also wanted to recognize our extremely generous community. The Ho-Chunk Nation proudly provides backpacks and supplies for students, and there are other businesses that organize school supply drives. My initial thought is that they can decide if they would like to contribute to the School Supply Equity Fund to ensure that their generosity is being utilized in the most efficient way possible. Or they could focus their efforts on providing supplies for older students in the district who are not being supported by the Equity Initiative at this time. Does anybody have any questions for me before Dr. Severson talks about the financial part of it?
I'm interested in the financial part of it.
Sure. So we don't have it solved, just to be real clear.
right.
Like there's no magic tree, no. Honestly, what we had talked about was So when kids come into school, they bring their bags and bags full of stuff, right? You see parents that come in during that first visitation day, and they sometimes have just like, they bogged down with all of the stuff, right? And immediately some parents are disappointed when the teachers want to make group supplies. So instead of each child getting their own desk with their own things, at the younger levels they create table supplies. So all the kids' scissors go in this bucket and all the crayons go over here and all. So then there's a parent who bought 148 crayon box and their kid gets a 16 crayon box to use that day because they're all group supplies. And so that gets uncomfortable sometimes, but also the number of generous community members that always say we want to be helpful, and so they buy, they do drives to supply some of those school supplies. What we talked about is, are there some supplies that the district could just try to find funds for? This is where the angel funds are coming in. Could we do explicit fundraisers around the idea of elementary school supplies and still allow parents the opportunity to customize a backpack and other items that aren't on, that would still stay on that parent list? And the reason I said the Clorox wipes, because that's one that I hear often from parents, like, isn't it your job to clean the school? Why do we need Clorox wipes? Well, because we're going to give you Quadstat spray and paper towels, and you don't want that. You want Clorox wipes. So all of those things. So the idea was, could there be a small list that families could still customize? Kids, because I'm a school supply dork. My kids came with me and pretended they were fired up about it each year, so we don't want to take away that experience from parents. But can we make it manageable? Because parents who have multiple kids, that kindergarten list, I would say, is $100 to $150, depending on whether they're feeling that we can be generous or not. So the idea was, we have the angel funds. Is this something that we just want to, when we've advertised angel funds in the past, people often call it the lunch money fund, but we also say lunch money or other needs, and we also use it for seniors that are ready to graduate and we pay for some of their fees and fines with. That has a very healthy balance right now, and we've not been intentional about growing that dollar amount, remembering that this school year none of our elementary families are paying for their meals, and so that those funds are still being used by our middle school and high school families, but there's some money in there. Or do we want to keep that, the angel funds, as it was created, and do we start just a school supply equity fund and if that's not the right name, then help us with what it is. But for example, Dunkin' Donuts, when they were doing their grand opening, they asked if they could use our logo and stuff for a fundraising. And so I have a check on my desk for $498. And if we decide that we're going to use one fund, I'm going to put that in the angel funds. If we're not, I'm going to put that in the school supply equity fund. This spring, the big family night this spring, May 10th, we're going to do the raffle baskets like we used to do back in the carnival. And those funds are earmarked for school supply drive. And so I haven't looked at, and so Melissa has looked at the kindergarten list and has talked to Forestry. We've not connected with anyone at Red Creek. That's our next step. And just seeing how much, like, if a parent had whatever they chose to spend on a backpack and $20 to buy, that feels very different than taking multiple kids shopping for those great big bags full of stuff. So if you have comments, questions about the idea, great. And if you have comments, questions, thoughts about the funding sources, open for those discussions as well.
I have a comment about, if parents are still wanting to purchase supplies just for their children, it's really important that they have the appropriate supplies at home as well.
Absolutely.
To follow through. And I know some parents, the scissors went to school, so I don't have one at home. But certainly encouraging the parents to, if they would like to purchase more, yes.
Absolutely. I hear it all the time in my classroom too, like, oh, you can finish that at home. They say, I don't have crayons at home.
Sorry, I don't have the right things.
Yeah.
So I think encouraging parents to still go shopping. This is what we need for kindergarten. We need this kind of scissors, and we need this kind of pencils. And, we'll practice at home as well. That would involve the parents. But I think it's a wonderful.
The other thing is we usually get a call. I can name like 3 different businesses or churches that they want to go out and do some of the shopping, and I don't know that they would be insulted if we said, would you rather just donate the money and we'll do the shopping in bulk and be able to take advantage of our pricing through school specialty and get the higher quality, less expensive, and they still feel like they are contributing and helping. or backpacks are always an easy and very much appreciated resource.
Well, and especially at the younger ages, then more of the supplies would be the same. They wouldn't be like the 64 box of crayons and now the student has 8. That would be nice, especially at the early level in kindergarten.
And really, it's a lot of it is like the quality of it too. I know some families cannot afford Crayola crayons, but they color the best. They're not as waxy. They have the true colors that we're trying to teach them. And so really just equal across the board. That way nobody is getting called out, or it just makes sense.
Excellent.
Spoken like a real kindergarten teacher, and then both our teachers got excited when we were talking about the Crayolas. Just saying.
No roads are.
Well, I just think financially at the start of the school year, it's really tough for parents. And didn't you just put out that we're at 68% free and reduced?
Yes.
68% free and reduced is a large number. And if those children from that family that are free and reduced had to put out $150 for each child, that's a terrible burden.
Yeah.
So if we could do this, it'd be great.
Yes.
There's a lot of really great articles. I shared some with Dr. Severson too that have personal experiences and all of the advantages as well. It's just something I'm super passionate about. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
I don't know if it should be divided into 2 funds or not. I don't have a strong feeling about that. Either way. Whatever's
The only
best.
slippery slope that would happen, so the grant that our elementary schools and the meals this year, that is a 2-year, 1 year?
I think it's this year.
Okay, this year. And so who knows what will exist. And so we have processes in place where we say that we will use those funds while we're trying to work with the family on a payment process. So we wouldn't want to deplete those funds. But, you know, and so if it is separate, the advantage would be there might be a few items we have to put back on the parent bought list because of finances, you know, whatever. But yeah, wide open, and maybe the community, it's cleaner and easier for them to just say, there's our angel funds and we're going to use it for the negative lunch account balances, for school supply equity, seniors fees, like that certainly works for us.
Just a one line item.
That's what I'm
Wouldn't
wondering.
Put all
it
the
be
funds
easier to have one fund rather than 2 separate funds?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Exactly, I think I agree.
And as someone who's done a lot of fundraising for the Angel Fund, I definitely felt you had a vested interest in the direction of this.
And that's, I did not get a chance to look back at what we advertised in the past with that, but I don't think any of the donors would be concerned about, because we didn't specifically say only lunch.
Definitely did not, because we've
So-
always used it for seniors as well.
Right.
Okay.
So I don't have an issue with that. I think if the fewer larger buckets gives us more flexibility than splitting our funds into smaller buckets. But I do think we have some opportunity. This is a slightly different message than school lunch debt, that we can do some fundraising around this.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Melissa, can you either email me your list of supplies, or if you don't need that blank copy, either one?
Yes.
Perfect. I didn't need action on that. I was interested in your thoughts. If you would like to make it formal, you're certainly welcome to do that.
Well, I'll make a motion that we accept the presentation and donate or get the supplies together and the funds.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We are jumping ahead to 6.1 now, our art department.
I'm excited about crayons. Love it.
We're not here to ask for money. We take some, but our goal tonight was just I wanted to introduce myself, and I think Wade did too. Wade Neiman.
We'll show you Wade when it's his turn to talk.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I'm Julie Jeske. This is my 24th year of teaching, my first year here in this district. And I just wanted to, I recognize it's Youth Art Month, and I just wanted to throw some things for you to chew on. Often the art department is kind of looked at as a frilly little, easy class, whatever. And I just wanted to, because we're not on the standardized tests, I wanted you to understand that we are actually a big part of the success of all students. So this is what I shared at Red Creek. I'm gonna go through it super fast. Don't watch the video. We'll just go to the next slide. So this can be shared with you too. But I just want you to understand that when we are looking at art or any visual image for that matter, we are reading, okay? So it's, you talk about reading the room and you're reading body language and that kind of thing. So 90% of the information that we process is visual, and it only takes 13 seconds for us to process an image. Go ahead. And we process them 60,000 times faster than text. And every one of these little links, if you click on them, has the research about it. But and we remember 65% more of what we see compared to 10% of what we hear. So in the art department, I think it's important that we start teaching kids visual literacy, because I'm thinking about the heart spirits, what she's going to be talking about, but the woman who was there was talking about the heart. And she was, what do you think of when you see a heart? And everyone, love, everybody recognizes that as a symbol, as something that they've read. It has a meaning, right? That had to be taught at some point, right? So we are bombarded daily with visual images, whether it's in the grocery store, driving down the road, whatever, or watching TikToks or YouTube, and we don't even probably realize all of the things that are happening in our brains. So you see the Tide logo and you see the circle, and that has a meaning. The color has a meaning. The type of font that they chose was very careful. The FedEx logo, for example, I don't know if you've seen the negative space of the arrow. If you haven't, it's there. So if you didn't know it was there, you were being subliminally told because an arrow has a meaning, correct? So I think it's just important that kids understand and learn some of these things at a young age and throughout. Okay, so the next slide. So these are some of the things.
Never knew there was an arrow until she just said that. Anyone else? That was me. All right, thank you. Sorry.
So at the elementary level, at least, we do, I see, I think, I feel, I wonder. And in connection with reading, we talk about creating a claim, like I believe this means this because of these, this, and this. So they find the supporting details, just like in reading, they have to be able to support their argument about why it makes them feel a certain way. Is there a right or wrong answer? Not really, because in art, everything makes people feel a little bit differently. But it can be that way with reading text as well, so like literal text. Okay, same thing. Go ahead to the next one. So there's also other other things, visual language that we're obviously deciphering and reading every day. Their body language, use of objects to convey information, signs and symbols like I was just talking about, and then the graphics or logos that represent ideas. Okay, I think this is, okay, so this was with Red Creek, so I think I'm pretty much done here on this part. So I just wanted to explain that was important, and also the power of the creativity that we're building with the kids. So yes, it's fun, and I'm not going to deny that. Like, I hope my class is fun, but the idea that they're problem solving is more important every day. You can go to Target and you can buy a toilet brush that was designed by Michael Graves. Why do we do that? Because we have so much stuff. Like, we have so much stuff. So everything that if you are going to market something, it has to be particularly good. You think about the AI and what's happening now, and how you can basically get, essays written for you if you want to. That creativity is important in the workplace. So Wade is up now.
Wade is up now. This is Wade Neiman. And Wade was traveling here today and had some car trouble, like serious car trouble. Like, there's 6 bolts that hold your wheel onto the car. He only had 1. And I don't know if it fell off, I don't know. He's okay, Molly's okay,
So
everybody's
he's not a
okay.
mechanic, but he is an art teacher.
Yeah, but he is very mechanical, so he fixed it on the side of the road. He's on his way, but he's in Illinois still. So, Julie's gonna talk about Wade and his role at the middle school.
So another important reason why we feel art should be valued is for the social emotional part of it. And Wade, if you were here speaking, would talk to you about the connections that he's made with students. And at the middle school level, you all know that they can be a little bit sketchy, a little bit, up and down. And so having those connections with teachers is pretty important. It gives them a safe place to be and a place to release the things that they need to release. So, and he has an awesome job with students. So.
Hey Dan, you have anything to add about Wade?
Absolutely, and the thing about Wade is there's no right or wrong answer. It's how he sees it and how you perceive it. And he really teaches that openness in his class. He does a fantastic job. Students love him. I've walked in his room 50, 60 times this year. Kids are always engaged in youth, but
I can't wait to get that up on high school. And I'm Jen Dahl. I came from elementary school 22 years here in Black River Falls, and I decided to move to the high school, and it was a great move for me. We've been busy little bees. I'm in charge of Youth Art Month for the state of Wisconsin. I don't know if you know that or not, but I service all those districts throughout the state, and we have a culminating art show this Friday. And I also won a national award, so next month I'm going to Texas to accept said award. I got second place by half a point, and I'm mad.
We talked about this at a previous meeting.
Okay,
And we
I'm
told you to
mad.
get over it. You got the point.
But I do have a Youth Art Month endorsement that I would love for you to fill out, and you can give it to Marty, and she will send them all to me because this adds points for my half a point that I'm missing. I told you we'd be fun. Also, we'd love for you to come to Heart Spirits. I just fired this past week during spring break the first kiln load full of hearts. And we would love if you could come to the unveiling of the hearts on May 4th. Nothing broke in the kiln, it was amazing. So, I have both of those things that I'll pass out to you. My kids and Julie's kids have art currently at the public library that we would love you to see until Friday for sure. But otherwise, that's us.
Any questions for them?
Is the president coming?
Well, I invited him.
I know he did.
I invited him. And I'll keep inviting until they come. I mean, does that freak you out, Luke?
0 chance.
I know that she was there, but that moment when she said, "Welcome to my classroom," to Governor Evers, I thought, wow, you can cross that off your bucket list.
So I'll pass those papers out. If you have any questions, holler. You're welcome in my classroom, Julie's classroom, Wade's classroom, any day.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So I'm just sitting here thinking about the power of like a great art program and the impact it has on a building. And I haven't been in Dan's building, but listening to him talk, I mean, I've been in Dan's building, I've been down in the art room. Listening to him talk about the impact Wayne's had, and if you've been in our building, it's a complete shift in the way our kids feel about art. And just, if you've been down in that wing and you see all the great work that our kids have done, that Jen puts out, it just changes the feeling of the building.
Well, that's because I had them as little sweet peas.
And there aren't very many high school teachers who can get away with starting class with, "Okay, honeys, okay, sweeties." She does.
And who's gonna cross her, right?
Nobody. Nobody. They don't dare.
I very much appreciate that you guys took the time to come, and you always share such great advocacy. And I'm just going to share a story. Julie, being new this year, she's at the new teacher seminars, and one of the first conversations that we had at our second seminar here, her and Joey Barnett, our first year music teacher, but also Black River Falls graduate, were talking, and it was, we were talking about communication, and we said, tell us one thing that frustrates you about, or that you wish others knew about you. And they both said, we wish the rest of the staff understood how significantly our work impacts the academics. And then did you see the beginning of that presentation? That was all about that linkages, right? Because of the previous mindset that perhaps those specials area are a time for kids to go so that the classroom teachers get their opportunity to prep and stuff. But talk about a team that takes advantage of every opportunity with kids to make sure that they're continuously moving them forward. So
We are underutilized, seriously underutilized.
well, there is a conversation to be had there.
Yes,
Absolutely.
we're working on it.
Absolutely.
We're working on it.
Fantastic.
You'll see more of us. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, now we're moving back to the original order. 5.1 public comment. There was no one signed up this evening. 5.2 gifts and grants.
Yes, we have quite a few of them this month. Mr. Markhart received a $250 grant from the Jackson County, I put dairy promotion committee, my mistake, that he gets to use for his egg classes and FFA activities. The Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation is giving the FFA $1,054 for their activities. And then Ashley Furniture, that is one that you've seen in the past as well. that they work on so many of the STEM activities and really trying to grow that in our community. Ashley Furniture is also really aggressive with wanting to share grants or scholarships with our graduating seniors as well. And so I appreciate the Wanik family's dedication to education and wanting to make sure people have those opportunities. And so the total value of their donation is $42,875. And this is certainly not their first donation, and I'm quite certain it won't be their last as well. So very generous. And I also appreciate Mr. Markart for reaching out for those smaller classroom grants as well, right? It doesn't seem like that much, but when you ask a classroom teacher what their slice of the building budget is, getting that kind of money from outside sources really makes a big difference.
So I will move that we accept those.
Second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're on to the school year start date waiver.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know that before our last meeting, we held the separate hearing to be able to request an early start date from the September 1 date. I shared with you that previously that's not been a thing. DPI has not been willing, and they did. So we have been approved. So that means that we can move forward with our next calendar option because DPI did approve our start on the Wednesday of that week. So, yes, just wanted you to know, it's official.
All right, and then we have the school year calendar in front of us here.
So I shared with all of you the two options that were generated on the academic year calendar. I also shared with you the process that we used to get there, and I just am gonna share this little bit of a conversation. So usually we ask everybody to vote, and it's like a 49 to 51%. Like it's usually so close. I remember there was a year, it was the day of the board meeting, and I sent out an email at noon and said, people, we're tied at like 49 point something to 49 point something. And so then people voted and we got a winner. This time was the largest gap. It was 60 to 40%. And this time I've heard more people complaining that they don't like the one that was chosen. So it was voted on, and we had 125 staff members that took the opportunity to vote. And we made sure in the survey that each person could only vote one time. So all I can tell you is we asked, this is what they said, and so there's been some advocacy the opposite direction since then, but the administrative team is recommending option 1, as was voted on by 60% of those that took the opportunity to vote.
Is that because they want another week's spring
They
break?
want spring break. But the vote shows us, and so I don't know if you guys caught that, we were, the team that put this together was extremely intentional about having some breaks every single month. And the hope is that staff attendance will improve, that if there is a known break at the end of the week, maybe on Monday when I'm not feeling awesome, I could make it because I know that I have Friday off, right? We recognize that this gets a little bit challenging for families to have to find childcare around those breaks, but the lack of substitute teachers is at crisis level, and so we are doing this in an attempt to improve staff attendance and improve attendance by recognizing you need breaks. You need a break every now and then, and so this is our means to make that happen. And you'll also notice that kind of a trade-off. We eliminated the many 3-hour early releases, which also was a challenge for families because they would need to alter their plans on those days and find childcare. So there's far fewer of those, but instead there are more full days. Just a reminder that at the last meeting, the board approved reducing the number of student days by 2, increasing the amount of instructional minutes by 5 per day, and eliminating the teacher contract, or I'm sorry, reducing the teacher contract by 2 days as well. So.
And then it's my understanding that perhaps the following year then there would be a spring break.
That was what we were hoping, that we could try it every other year. And we will put forth options, right? And so honestly, we said to the people who are displeased with this, maybe we jump right in and look at the calendar for 24, 25. We don't have to wait until next winter
So
to
they
do
can see
it.
coming. Yeah.
Or maybe we could say, live this for a little bit and see how much you appreciate having those breaks built in and see if maybe this serves your needs. Because if you recall, through handbook language, they can bank personal days that if they were still interested in taking a full week, that would be possible.
Are these normal Fridays or is it an hour early?
Every Friday is still the 1 hour early release. There's no change to that recommended.
And teachers would, I'm sure, definitely appreciate having April 1st off.
Well, because of the.
Oh, because it's Mary Danielson's birthday?
You gotta be a teacher to understand that.
Yes, yes. So if there's no other questions, we're recommending option 1 for your approval.
I make a motion to approve calendar option 1.
Further discussion? And I'll just interject, I did hear from a couple of staff members that were disappointed about this. I've also heard from a number of families that are disappointed when we do have spring break, or either way. I've heard both sides of this one, but if you guys haven't participated in the whole calendar creation process, it's pretty interesting. I wasn't able to make it this year, but last year, just half a dozen proposals go forth, and they get narrowed down, and eventually we get 2 when it comes for a vote. So it's pretty interesting. Anything else? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. School forest agreement, 5.5.
All right. So wanted to share with you, my page, I'm sorry. The school forest, we need an agreement, there it is, a land use agreement between Jackson County, because surrounding our school forest piece is some county land, and there is, every 10 years this agreement needs to be signed. So this is year 10 of that, and it's not necessarily something that needs the board's approval, but I did want to take an opportunity to just talk a little bit about the school forest and make sure everybody was aware of the resource that we have with the school forest. Each building uses it a little bit differently. There are some of our upper level science classes that use it very, very, very heavily for lots of hands-on learning. It's kind of fun that you can tell the teachers that have a strong passion for the outdoors because they find ways to make sure they weave in these opportunities. We do still have a structure out there. Jill, is it insulated?
Yeah,
it
was
is.
improved, yeah.
And I don't remember when. Do you recall? Within
probably been 10 years.
Okay.
Years, yeah.
Okay, so there is the structure out there. It is usable in the winter. We've had groups that go out and do their snowshoeing and so forth, and there's a pond that's out there. 4th grade takes their GPS out there and do some searching around and all that stuff. So it is utilized in a lot of different ways across the grade levels, and just wanted to remind you of that great resource that we have. So don't need your approval, just wanted your awareness.
I think it's great that we're getting some outdoor education with our students.
Yeah.
All right, item 5.6. So this is the follow-up to our listening session, which was our very last meeting.
And I was the one that I think requested this to be on the agenda because I didn't think we should have a listening session, hear what people had to say, and then just drop it. And not come back to it. So one thing I was wondering, I have some thoughts on different things, but I was going to ask the high school. I know before you felt that the tensions were pretty high there. Have you seen any improvement? How's it going? Something I wanted to know.
Yeah, I think that waters are calming, and that doesn't mean we stop having conversations and stop moving forward. So I do feel that people, and I'm not just making that blanket statement. I've talked with some of the big stakeholders in our building on this, and they feel the same way.
And I've been giving it a lot of thought since that last meeting, and so all you have to do is watch the news every night, and you see degrading comments from people that are in charge. You hear a lot of that, and I think it's not just our school's problem. It's a community problem. It's a nation problem, and it's hard to know how to fix that. And as a board member, I'm just hoping that we can address it through guidance, but it starts early. And I don't think at an early age we should ever accept people using degrading comments about racism, it could be transgender, it could be obesity, anything, it's not acceptable. And as a board member, I would like to see all of our schools not accept that happening and a consequence being given and it being taught also, that is not acceptable. I don't know what the appropriate consequence is, but I think it starts early and it has to be taught all the way through, but it is definitely a systemic problem throughout our country. So.
Well, and we can't, to your point, Mary Jo, Luke at the high school cannot fix it at the high school, right? I mean, it's in the schools, it's out of the schools, it's earlier in the schools. If the first time they're being educated on this is ninth grade, then we failed at that point already.
Right. And on TV today, they were just talking about all the anti-Semitism that's going on. It's only 2%, I think 2% of the population, but they're receiving a lot of negative comments also. So it's all over. But I think we all need to expect our students to use kindness and correct language, not degrading language. And I don't know. I would just like to see that enforced throughout all of the schools. I'm sure it's taught. I know it is taught now because I was a teacher too. But if there's anything we can do to make it consistent and not allow it to, or not just let it go, you have to address it when it happens.
I've been a board member for almost 15 years, and I've seen lots of training offered to staff and board members and community through the school district on the subjects that we're concerned about. I've taken advantage of a lot of that myself, and fortunately had employers that felt it was important too, so would give me time off or actually support the time to go to the trainings that I felt were appropriate, including hundreds of hours of SEEDS training. And the school has always supported that and required it. I've been at just even the last fall, all staff coming back, that whole morning was our Black Deer Mackenzie, someone who I really admire and support to the work that she's done and to work with all of us and the way that has happened. I want to see all of that continue and increase. All of us sitting around at this table, we get support to go to training from the school if we can. It's not required. I do board member training is not required in the state of Wisconsin to a public official. Some states require it, but I would encourage you, the school does a wonderful job of supporting us, increasing our professional development and governance and issues that we're concerned about. So, but I too, I valued the listening session and thinking about it all along and reflecting on my own journey as a board member, as a parent, my whole life I've reflected on what it meant. I'm glad we have it, and I don't think we need to end the discussion at all. It does continue, like Mary Jo said, and be open in our schools.
I just think we need to celebrate diversity. We have such a diverse community, it's wonderful. And I think maybe by celebrating that, that's maybe how it comes around also.
Some of the districts in Wisconsin and outside of Wisconsin have included a inclusion, diversity, equity director for their districts. Again, that would be a big budget issue to address as a board. But I know Oshkosh just approved it last month at their meeting, and I've talked with their board president about how they got to that point in their community. Again, and sadly, when those topics come up, there are people who oppose inclusion, diversity, equity, and when they're so I mean, I don't know if we want to talk about that too in the future.
See how budget goes.
Yeah.
Any other, I'd like to hear from more if you have comments.
If I could prompt, so I look at you guys as the policy setters, right? You are not the ones in the buildings doing the work on a daily basis. I'm interested in your thoughts on where does this work intersect with your roles, right? At what policy level can we start to make some of these adjustments?
I think we're there. I think there's opportunities of training and support within the buildings, individually, as a whole. And for us as a board to understand, I think it's there as it's offered to us as well, to attend any of the trainings that we wish to, or can, or are available to do that.
Do you feel like there needs to be any more policies that address this?
So I'm going to give you a very recent example, and I'm not sure it's policy, but I'm interested in your thoughts. So your comment about we shouldn't tolerate, and please know I'm not advocating for zero tolerance. Those are not the words I'm speaking. If we're saying we shouldn't accept words like that, there was recently a parent who said some horrible things, screamed at one of our staff members, and I asked the police to give that individual a disorderly conduct because those words were said on school grounds, in front of students, in front of other staff members, and the police just said, really, are we going to start picking this fight? And I'm saying, is that a place where our board says, if it's not okay, right? I mean, a parent comes in that unruly, doesn't that empower a student to say those words and not be held accountable? And when you get contacted by a community member who's furious because they were told you need to leave, you may not speak to us like that you recognize there's two sides to every story and that you come and you're willing to listen. So I feel like your intersection with policy is in knowing, and so Luke made a comment about how things are starting to settle. The whole community felt the lack of settle, if you will, right? And so if we're saying as a school, this stuff isn't okay, then we need formal support for this. If there's an expulsion hearing because of some of these actions, that's your opportunity to say, you're right, this isn't okay. Like the high school can kick a kid out for using racist language, but you are the ones that make that decision as to what happens next. And I'm not saying kicking all the kids out is the answer. Of course, education and training, but we also know that there are some times they need to know what the ultimate consequence is. And without an ultimate consequence, you keep in this weird spot where you're not really sure where it goes.
I hope my comment was interpreted in the right way when I said we're there. When I didn't want to, I think we've been doing a lot all along.
Sure.
And,
I didn't misconstrue. I guess I'm telling you that if you're
If you don't have
asking
specific
the administrators
policy,
to be more intentional and aggressive with disrupting those conversations at every single turn, know that you're going to start to hear that and feel that, and they and the staff members are going to want to know that you are there to support that disruption of the conversation as opposed to anything less than, I guess is what I'm trying to communicate in a maybe not so clear cut manner.
If you don't disrupt and tell them that that's not okay, then it just keeps going, in my opinion. I mean, that's a plan. Maybe could we talk about this as a board development sometime? I'd love to talk about that.
For sure.
And maybe we can set some, well, you think of, in the last years, we've had adults here screaming at us at school board meetings, and that is not appropriate.
And that's where I was headed as well, because one of the students that's extremely empowered, right? I mean, it all.
Well, they see that we accept it, so that's how they talk. So I think we do just need to make some parameters and enforce it.
And so that was my point, that your job is policy, not necessarily the everyday.
Right.
So where can you impact change by policy?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. And, to add on to, like, the waters are calming, that doesn't mean any of us can stop having those conversations. That's things were calm before this happened, but obviously it was some of this tension was lying just under the surface. We didn't see it. We've got to continue to address this.
When is our next board development?
I don't think we have one
Yeah,
on
we
the
do.
calendar.
It's May, because we changed
Yeah,
it.
May 8th, wasn't it?
I would have to look.
I think it is May 8th. May 8th.
Can we put that as a topic and get some sample policies?
We do have a special board meeting scheduled May 8th. I don't know what's on that agenda at this point.
It could be board reorganization
Mhm.
as well.
Is that the first meeting that the new
They're
members will
sworn
be seated?
in on April 17th, but don't, sworn in on the 17th, and then that is the outgoing board members' last meeting, and so the new people take office following that meeting. So board reorganization could happen May 8th, and then those people would be seated.
I think that seems like an appropriate time to address some of this.
If you guys have specific thoughts or ideas as to what type of policy recommendations or ideas, I'm wide open.
Let's look at some sample policies that might be out there already for some districts.
Something that I know is going to be very controversial is the idea of hate symbolism. That is not something that we have clearly articulated, and that there are some districts creating some sample policy on that.
That would go right along with this. We take a look at it.
Any further discussion on 5.6? All right, we are through 5.7 and 6.1. We're on to 6.2, employment recommendations. Nothing is needed for action this evening, just for information.
Questions? We could celebrate Brad Meyer's pending retirement. He's made it official from his role over at Gebhardt. So some tough shoes to fill for certain, and we will celebrate him at a later time. So.
Is there any other retirements after this year?
Not yet. So if there's somebody thinking of it, they haven't shared it with us yet.
Okay.
Is Christine Stewart, the community health worker, is that part of that?
Grants, 100% grant funded. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Christine Stewart. She's held a lot of different community-oriented positions in the community. Her daughter teaches for us. Yep. So we're really excited that we hired for that position. So that is the grant funded.
Okay.
Next is, we're in the 7 series, so we're up to the math materials adoption.
So I didn't include this with the math pilot or with the packet this month, but I was putting together my comments, and then I was like writing and thought, well, we need a visual for me to follow instead of copying this line. So on the next slide, I just want to talk the way this is organized, just kind of a timeline of where we've been, and then what our next steps will be. So I talked to the board last year, and we started a math pilot for K through 5. So going in, before we started any of this work, the math curriculum that we have for kindergarten through 5th grade is called Math Expressions. And in 2018, Math Expressions did an update. And so Math Expressions is what we call green on EdReport. So EdReport is what we use to look at curriculum to know about how well it aligns to our standards and the usability of the program. So in January of last year, many teachers were asking for us to look at a math pilot. So we started by doing a review of EdReports and what programs were green in that resource. And we selected 5 to look at. We, as we were talking about it, we continued talking about that Math Expressions might be what we end up with because it is green on EdReports. So then in February, we received those physical programs. We narrowed down from 5 to 2 after looking at the physical pieces. And then from March to May last year, we piloted 2 resources. One was called Reveal,
and one is called Bridges. And so at the end of May, that pilot, as you can see, was short. It was a shorter pilot at the end of the school year, and in the middle of all that, we were, say, testing. Not the best time for a pilot, and the curriculum at the end of the year, it's a little bit different than what you're going to be doing and seeing at the beginning of the year. The outcome of that pilot, that shorter pilot, was we didn't have consensus. We were all over the board. We had grade levels that loved Bridges. We had grade levels that hated it. We had grade levels that loved Reveal, and then we had people that just wanted to stay with math expressions. So that's where we were. And so then in this year, what we decided to do for our next steps was to continue to the pilot into this last school year. And K through 1, they were going to continue to pilot Bridges, and 2 through 5 was going to continue to pilot Reveal. We were exploring the option of possibly having 2 different curriculums, although that was something that we weren't sure about, and we just wanted to keep our options open. The outcome, and we did that from September to December 2022, and the outcome of that was no consensus and that we needed more information. So at that point, Dr. Stevenson's joined us, and I was very grateful for that, because this was a very complicated, difficult process.
I inserted myself in the middle of the discussion.
And then what we did is we decided we needed more information, and we went through a process. So there was really 2 parts. I don't have the other part on there, but one part is we wanted to know what our data looked like at mid-year as far as math was concerned, and compare how the pilot materials compared to the math expressions, kind of look at that. That didn't give us any information. And so then the second thing that we did in January and February is Dr. Stevenson really thought this is a very good idea, is we looked at school districts similar to the school district of Black River Falls. We're looking more at economics, similar free reduced lunch, and schools that had a 90% growth rate in math for the past 3 years, but really it was the past 4 because there was that 1 year in there where we didn't test, COVID. And so we came up with this list of schools that you see up there. You'll notice that many of those are schools that are near us. And then we interviewed administrators, and we asked questions like, what program are you using and what do you attribute that math growth to? And we found out the majority of those districts were using math expressions, which is where we started. And the principals attributed that growth, though, this was the important part, to teacher practices, which was what we talked a lot about. And they talked a lot about things like in grade 8, like collective self-efficacy. And they talked about the culture that their schools had around math. And they talked about PLC practices, and that in their systems, nothing was missing. So then we presented that information to our math pilot team. And we had a really in-depth conversation, and I just want to really say the teachers, we have 2 teachers from each grade level that are piloting, and this has been a lot of work. They've put in a lot of extra hours, a lot of time to help really make a good decision, because we don't want to just buy a resource that's not going to work for our students. So we met to determine what are we going to do next. We're going to pilot again, and no one was really interested in doing that. And then we thought, well, maybe we could look at other resources through interview or observation, or to focus on math expressions and professional development around those resources and the math practices. And so then we talked about all of that. The math pilot teams then went back to their grade levels, and then for the next steps, for the outcome, what we really determined was to go with kindergarten using Bridges, which is really developmentally appropriate because it's really engaging, and it has lots of manipulatives and it's game-based, and really helpful for students that are learning number sense, that beginning counting, when one corresponds, that type of thing. With Bridges, there is this option called Number Corner, and it's all those things I was kind of talking about, the hands-on manipulative things, that it's separate, that you would do during your morning meeting type of work. So that's what we were thinking about. That's what we plan to do with kindergarten. First grade, they are going to use math expressions, but they're also going to implement Number Corner. And then we just talked about adding more manipulatives and making sure that we have really good math practices implemented and professional development. And you kind of see through is kind of that same thing, second and third. Looking at Number Corner, looking at manipulatives, PD around those practices. And what is loose and what is tight? What resources are we connecting directly with what we are doing as far as instruction goes? Of course, it is very similar to second and third.
Before we go to questions, just something that I appreciate you giving the teachers credit, because seriously, it has been so much time and effort on their part, and they were fantastic. When we got that list of schools together and we said, so we're gonna call them all, we're gonna tell, and the first words that we asked each of the leaders was, to what do you attribute your math growth? And the first words were always, well, our PLC teams are really high functioning, and we've done a lot of work around developmental appropriateness in math. And so not just taking the math, so then we said, what resource are you using? And I think almost all, maybe there was one in there that was not using math expressions. All of them were the same series, all of it that we have. When we had the teachers together and we talked to them, there were a few key things that they wanted to focus really hard on. Is they wanted to have more hands-on and engagement with math content as opposed to worksheet based. And when you look at that pendulum of math, right? It just swings back and forth between the very traditional sit and memorize your facts and move forward to there's not very much direct instruction and the kids are left to wondering. What'd you say?
To investigate.
To investigate, yeah, exactly. That was our investigations for a while. And so expressions is meant to be somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, but the teachers really wanted to focus hard on more. Again, the grade 8 strategies, students engaging with the content, students talking to each other about math and about their thinking and their sense of self-efficacy in math. But one of the things we said over and over to the teachers is, we believe the math curricular resources that are going to be the most successful are the ones that you as teachers want to use the most. Whatever you decide is going to have the greatest impact in your classroom, we believe you, and we also agree that that's going to happen, because that sense of self-efficacy is one of Hattie's highest research pieces. If you believe it as the teacher and you can get kids to believe it, guess what? It happens over and over and over again. And so we made sure, does anyone just hate expressions and will be sad if we said we're going back for another year? That was kindergarten. They said, we will be devastated if we don't get to use bridges. We said, okay, use bridges, go. Because I used this example way back in the day, every teacher came up with their own little mnemonic devices to teach kids all these math practices. We don't do that anymore. We use academic language. We call it what it is. And so if one's using a different curricular resource to get to two-digit multiplication, it's okay, because they're not going to call it remember my Aunt Susie's method? No, it's two-digit, right? So we've moved way past that, and so that's no longer a concern. And kindergarten believes very hard in that program. They're going to make it successful, way more than if we said, do this, and we promise it'll work. Trust us, it'll work, right? Everybody else was somewhere on that spectrum. None of the other grade levels felt like they hated math expressions. They wanted to be able to use it with the sense of efficacy that those 90% growth school districts did. And so, interesting story about first grade. They came in after their bridges, and they're two strong teachers, fantastic teachers. They came in the first after they piloted it, they said, we need bridges. Oh my God, this was the greatest thing ever. I'm like, okay. So then a month passes, we come back to the next meeting, and I'm like, well, kindergarten, we already know where you are, because they like almost have bridges tattooed on their foreheads. And then first grade, I'm like, and I know what you think. She goes, nope, hate it, got a new unit, hate it, not liking it, we don't want it all. I'm like, good Lord, I can't keep up with you, right? So they're not using bridges, they did not recommend that. But the other part is those math practices. Those that have been on the board for a while, remember the math grid, where so many of our staff engaged in lots of high quality professional development around the 8 math practices. Tim Young, as the math department chair up at the high school, all the way through, we were talking about those 8 math practices. And we've had a lot of turnover over the years, not recently, but our recent focus has been all about our CKLA and our English Language Arts reading curriculum materials. And so those people that have even been with us 4 or 5 years, they haven't had a lot of work on those 8 math practices. So they said, we want to get better at our PLCs, we want to focus on those math practices, and we want to dive deeper into the resources that we have. So it's a cheap adoption, but not when you consider their time and effort and the professional learning. And we said it's time to restock the manipulatives, right? Those classroom sets are all over the map. So we've got a big spreadsheet where they are putting in all the different manipulatives that they will use, regardless of what their core resource is. Those manipulatives can be implemented in so many different conversations and stuff. So it's been a long journey for sure. And I feel like everyone just left like, Okay, we're gonna keep with expressions then. Like it's been a long journey for them, but I feel pretty good about where we landed.
I do too.
Yeah.
So it is math expression?
Yeah, it sure is, except for kindergarten. They're gonna use bridges.
In the past years, when we got reports about the math grant, when they were doing all that work, there was talk about some teachers taking the lead in the math departments within their grade categories. Is that still happening?
Yep, so I would pick like third grade. There's 2 or 3 teachers that did so much of the math grant work. The instructional coach over at Red Creek has taken on so much of that work. The math grant itself wasn't focused on the K1. Those teachers were always asking to go and they weren't allowed to, per the grant, not us. But there are still some people who were experts, but again, professional development time is finite, and we adopted that whole ELA curriculum, and we're seeing some nice growth there, and it's kind of like you squeeze the balloon, right? If you put too much focus on one area, you lose the opportunity in other areas, and so it makes good sense that we need to refocus a little bit around that work. So we'll get some outside help, and the lady at CISA is fantastic, but we definitely have some experts internally that can help us with that.
Are there some electronic resources out there? I mean, are they attached to math expressions and?
There's too many electronic resources out there.
So that's where that whole tight and loose thing is really talking about, like, why are we using the electronic resource? Who is it good for? Where are we differentiating? Like really getting explicit about why and when we're using them. Because there's free ones. There's all sorts of, there's stuff we're paying for. Yeah.
And I think it was really wise to reach out to districts that have seen that growth. That's what you need to do, you know. And I don't have a problem with using different grade levels. I know I talked to someone from Allen Center. I said, you guys do really well in reading. How are you doing that? You know, they said each grade level feels so passionately about what they're teaching. And if you do feel passionately about the materials you have, I think you'll have better outcomes.
The sense of self-efficacy cannot be
No.
underestimated, honestly, for students and adults.
So why was math expressions originally eliminated in the pilot?
Because we're already using it, so we didn't have to pilot it.
Okay.
Everyone already had experience with it.
So it's not that you ruled it out,
Right.
you were just trying to.
And when we were asking for the pilot, there was one grade level that said, "Do you want to stay with expressions?" And we said, "Try it, just try it, just try a pilot."
So we kept that language in throughout that we could stay with math expressions, so that may be the outcome.
Try it, or we're gonna make you go back to investigation.
No, we never said those words. No, we never said those words. So it's a messy process, but I hope the teachers' voices felt very heard, and I feel like the elementary principals and Nicole did a fantastic job facilitating the process so that they did feel like decision makers in it.
Do you need a motion for this?
Because we're not asking you to do anything right now, so nope. We're gonna use some of our curricular funds that were set aside for our math materials adoption to buy lots of manipulatives, and we are already looking at scheduling professional development for next year, but Red Creek has both elementary buildings have a big chunk on April 10th coming up for math.
All right, next up, we're in the 8 series here, 8.1 monthly expenditures. Questions for Jill, otherwise we're looking for action.
I make a motion to approve the monthly expenditures as presented.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, facility update?
All right, just wanted to give you a quick rundown on some of the bigger pieces. Over at Forest Street, when you first walk in, there's that big activity wall. In theory, it looked like a fantastic piece, and it just never really looked as great as we were hoping, and it was made with MDF board, and after us asking a lot of questions about it, that's not how it was originally spec'd, and so only a few months into use, and you could already see where the seams were, and it just really did not. And there is a whiteboard there, but markers, imagine that, 5-year-olds don't keep it on the whiteboard part, and they wrote on other pieces, and so it looked really dingy and dirty, and so we said what kind of material is supposed to be surrounding that so it doesn't look so old so quickly. And right now they are experimenting with different paints and stuff, and so they rebuilt them during break. They added some chalkboard paint? No.
Dry erase.
I don't remember which one it said. but we can't use them for a week. And so Melanie didn't know that until today that they did that over the break. But there's also the ongoing flooring issue over at Forest Street. There's no new updates there other than right outside of the special ed space, what used to be the outside of the office, that has no flooring on and it crackles when you walk on it. They are working on their plan for fixing that area. We still have not given the approval for the rest of the flooring downstairs. Last time I was in the building, there's actually more rips around the edges, and so I would not be, one of the suggestions that they have brought up is that the edging is where it's not adhered, and so they said if they cut that out and put a different color so there's like a border along the whole thing, I feel like that's a huge compromise on our part, and I'm not sure we have to make it that easy for them when
Is it new flooring down there?
Mhm. It's that rubber flooring, and
It's already coming up.
well, because it was never adhered well, it comes in big mats, and so they would put the mortar down and roll it from the middle, so the middle is adhered well, but it was too dry by the time they got to the edges, and so you just walk along the edges and you tap and you can tell where it's hollow and it separates. And so every time they go over it with a mop, the part sticks up a little bit, so it's catching dirt and it just looks terrible. And we were hoping that we were going to come to a resolution a lot sooner. They're willing to come back, but they keep fixing like this much of it, and then I walk in and I'm like, but what about that big tear? Oh, and then they fix that little piece, and they seem to be missing the big picture. So it is still very possible that it will be a complete rip out this summer, and they will lay all their flooring there.
Local contractors?
No. So that is moving along. There were some issues at the high school in the Family Consumer Science room. All of those were taken care of during break, and so we weren't aware of them until just before break, but ask and you shall receive. Those have all been taken care of. So I had a community member ask if we are going to do an open house of Forest Street, and I said absolutely, but not until it's much closer to done. So lots of work to be done yet.
Any further questions on facilities? Good to hear generally positive news.
Yeah.
After months of less than positive news.
Yes.
All right. Next is 8.3. We are up to a budget discussion.
All right. So there were a couple of documents that were included just as for your information, and we certainly don't need to spend a lot of time on them. I just feel like sometimes we hear words and it paints a picture in your mind, but as we learned from our art department, a picture can certainly make a big difference. I think we've talked at great length about the fact that we are a low spending district, but I just thought this was a nice visual way of looking at how many districts in the state are considered low spending. And so this one, all of the red spend $10,000 and under per student. And so you can see there are some areas where there's an awful lot of red, and boy, from right here, I'm having a hard time finding, here we are. Used to looking at the weather map to find our shape, not this map.
This is a weird resolution.
I know.
It says 25%. Anyway.
Okay, so here, keeps moving. There is Black River Falls, and so you can look around at our neighbors and how many districts are considered low spending. And so when you hear advocacy on the biennium budget and people are talking about increasing the low spending cost per pupil, you can see how many districts that would impact. And so that conversation changes just a little bit. The orange are spending up to $500 more than us per pupil. And the yellow are up to $1,000 more than us. The light green is $1,500. The darker green is $1,200, and those blue are spending over $12,000. So that is more than $2,000 per student. So multiply 2,000 times our 1,300. No, 1,600.
Yeah.
1,650. Sorry, 1,650.
And
So-
that per student cost is what the state gives that public school district.
That is not.
This is revenue.
That is the maximum.
Of what we can.
Just to be really clear, that is the maximum amount right now, without going to referendum, that
Yes.
those districts can spend per student. It has nothing to do with state aid or local property tax. It is 100% the revenue limit. That's as much money as the state will
That we're
allow us.
allowed to spend.
Mhm. And so I just wanted you to see that because it is interesting to see how many school districts are considered low spending, but it is also interesting to see the huge gap. Again, $2,000 or even $500 doesn't sound like that much until you multiply it by that many students, and then it starts to make significant impacts. So wanted to share that one with you. And then the other chart was simply, we had talked before about however you are moved to do budget advocacy or not. I just wanted you to have information. We talked about one of the largest pushes from the School Administrators Alliance towards elected officials on the upcoming budget was to increase the amount of special education reimbursement. So again, we have to transfer money from our Fund 10, where we have much more flexibility, into our Fund 27 to be able to pay for our special education costs. And Jill, our dollar amount that goes from Fund 10 into our special ed?
About $3 million.
So if you consider our budget deficits that we've had, an additional $3 million per year, if the state were to share more fully in the special ed costs. And so here we are, orange, and that means there is a between $1,500 and $1,999 per student that's being transferred out. So for every general education student, we are transferring $1,500 to $2,000 into special education. So it can't be spent here because it must be spent here, if that makes sense. So this time, the darker our color, the worse the scenario. Okay, so again, just wanted to share that. Does anyone have any questions or comments about that? All right. The only other piece of our budget picture that is known, that was not known last time, is our health insurance. If you recall, we were hopeful for something less than our cap. Hope is not a strategy. Our health insurance reimbursement, or health insurance costs came in at a 9% increase for next year. We were able to, as an entire co-op, our usage was at 96%, so below 100, that's good. But our prescription drug as an entire co-op was 120. I should have looked at this right before. But then our local usage, so Black River Falls, how we ran on our health insurance, was 100.1%. So we didn't help our co-op much. But last year we were 129%. So it was still movement in the right direction for us. But so 9% of our insurance increase will be a 9%. So we'll
Calculated increase for the co-op was 13%.
Yeah.
But we got the cap in.
Right. So that bargaining power of being part of that larger group, we had set a 2-year cap at 9%. Without that, we would have been charging 13%. So it was helpful that we're part of the co-op, but.
So what's, Jill's quick math, what's that 9% equate to in dollars? I happen to know that.
On that one, I know right where it is. On that spreadsheet, it isn't a percent. I'm gonna say 30,000.
About $30,000 a percent.
Yep.
A lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Right,
So
yeah.
not any action this time, just wanted you to be aware that we did one more number than we did before, and it's not what we were hoping for.
All right. So now we're up to 8.4 Policy Committee. This is first read on all of these. Again, we can always choose to talk about any of these or choose not to. They will be up for action at our next meeting. I am seeing nothing.
Well, I have one question. Is the para-pro exam on this new one? Was that on there?
So that was part of the handbook language.
Oh.
And you approved that at the special meeting, so I didn't put it on the agenda specifically. It was probably still.
I have it.
I don't know, I was looking at it.
It was in the packet.
It was in the
but not
packet.
on the agenda.
Okay, sorry.
I just don't, has that always been like that?
Tell me more.
I didn't know about the para-pro
Oh,
exam.
so that's not our choice, that is a state
Okay.
requirement. So the state says that all supports, all aides that are paid in a school with Title I funds have to meet the designation of highly qualified. And so what the state has determined is we used to be able to create our own local assessment, and the state no longer allows that. Either they need to have a 2-year or 4-year degree, but at least 2-year degree, 48
credits.
48 post-high school credits, or they need to pass that parapro exam.
I was reading that right.
And so unfortunately, we have some
I would
aides
think that'd be tough.
that have had to leave our employ because they've taken it repeatedly and are unable to pass it. The only opportunity would be at the high school because we don't use Title I funds at the high school, but we often move aides around with student population and enrollment, and so it doesn't seem appropriate for forestry to hire an aide and then say you have to go work at the high school because you're not able to pass this assessment.
I must have missed that in the other part because I didn't realize that they were paid at the substitute aid price till they passed the parent.
Yeah, we do pay for them to take the test. The cost of the test is $50, and we pay for it as they are attempting to pass it. Not our rules for certain.
Anything further on that? Okay, those will be for action. Next meeting, 8.5, Tom asked to talk about food waste.
Yeah, a group of teachers from over at Red Creek contacted me and about food waste, or not necessarily food waste, but throwing items away that were unopened, things like that. So there's a general concern there that, hey, you know, we're paying for these foods, why should they just be thrown away? Can we, you know, save them, put them on a share table, kind of an idea that if you don't open something, it could be put there. Obviously not hot items like omelets in a plastic bag or something like that, but you know, the cheese sticks, cereal, just different things. And so we met 2-3 weeks ago. Connie Sieber was there as well, and so we kind of came up with an idea that they would talk to Brandon, I believe, and Connie would be integral in getting this started. So they're going to start a pilot program after the break now. So obviously the ball is moving, but there's still some discussion that needs to be done as to who's going to be responsible for it. And, you know, I found out, and of course, I'm there, you know, once a week during lunch period, and my understanding is that, you know, if you take a carton of milk and you don't want to drink it, you still have to open it up and dump it out. So if you know ahead of time that you're not going to drink it, why do we take it? You know, that just seems like a big waste. So I just think that there's some things that are wasteful there. And so hopefully they're moving forward with their pilot program and kind of get things going as to what can be saved, what can be shared, what needs to be cleaned, you know, because we're talking about food. So I
hope you can share that Connie was really clear that we've been down this road and our sanitarian said no for the longest time, and now there's a new sanitarian and that's why it's even possible. No, that wasn't part of the discussion.
Yeah,
I just want to be clear, like we weren't doing this on purpose all this time because we wanted to be wasteful, but our sanitarian said absolutely not, cannot do a share table, no.
Right.
And then,
yes, there is a new one in place that just came in recently, right?
I just didn't want to paint the picture that we've been allowing all this waste.
No.
Just because
I'm
we
not painting that.
because we certainly have tried things in the past, but.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just think it's time to take a look at it, just to see how we can move forward with, you know, benefiting more students, you know, with opportunities to do food.
All right. So you're going to update us in the future then? Is that
Well,
what's working?
yeah, because after the break, I'm sure things didn't just happen today.
We were able to get it started today. It changed from a shared food table to a shared food cart so that we could move the stuff easier. A lot of cereal and juices today were dropped off on the cart, and we were able to, kids, if they were still hungry after eating breakfast, were able to come up and grab whatever it is that they wanted, including milk, and then bring it back to their tables and eat it. And then once breakfast was all cleaned up, we were able to take the cart with extra stuff on it and put it in a common area so that teachers could come get it later on for their kids if they had some.
So would it be a new cart each day, most likely?
It'll be the same cart, just food dropped from one spot to
Every
another.
day?
Yep.
Okay.
Interesting enough, we had a student who just wasn't doing well in class, went for a walk, said she was hungry, she grabbed some cereal, went back to class, and she was good to go for the rest of the day.
Benefits already.
Good job.
Where did she go with Tom?
All
Probably
right.
was Louise or something, you know?
That just makes sense if you can do it,
Right,
if it's allowed.
If it's
Yeah, I
allowed.
mean, we
If
can
it's allowed.
benefit students, benefit the district, benefit teachers. All right, the next item is meeting minutes. We have 2 from February 20th and 1 from.
Can I do
Yep.
one thing? Mandy, wait 1 second. Sorry. So I was going to and get the district admin report, but now she's getting ready to leave. Can I just do this very quickly?
go ahead.
So I received an email from Sue Gunther from Galesville Edric Trempealeau Schools, and she sent this message to myself and the school board members, and you'd want to hear this. It says, recently, Mr. Eli Youngthunder brought a large group of BRF students to Trempealeau Elementary to teach the Galesville Edric Trempealeau 4th and 5th grade students about the Ho-Chunk culture. We want you and the BRF school board to know what an amazing opportunity this was for our students. We were very impressed with how well these young people presented and engaged our students. The presenters were very knowledgeable and showed great pride towards the Ho-Chunk history and culture. It was hard to believe that they were in middle or high school because of how well they presented, interacted, and responded to students' questions. We think this is an amazing program for the Black River Falls School District to be providing for other schools in the area. We're so grateful that Ms. Emily Bowers guided us to Mr. Youngthunder for this opportunity. We hope this program continues so that each generation carries on the knowledge and traditions of the Ho-Chunk Nation. Sincerely, Haley Horseman and Sue Gunther. So wanted to share that during the district admin report that Eli facilitated a group of students that went to Galesville Trempealeau, and student-led, but students don't lead unless they are led as well. And so as I was going to congratulate in front of them, I wanted you to also hear this one. Thanks for coming. So that is pretty exciting email to get from a fellow educator. So, sorry, now we can do
No.
minutes.
So we have 3 minutes. If there's no corrections in there, we can just address all 3 as consent. Okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I will second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? And now for the rest of our district admin report.
Sorry about that. I actually have just one more thing. Our spring banquet is set for May 3rd. I hope that you will all consider. The planning team is making it our rock and roll theme this year, so that should be super fun. And I just thought it would be interesting to note, Marty did the math for us, of the people who are going to be recognized, the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, there are 410 years of service that are going to be recognized on that May 30th. So hopefully you're willing to join, and if you would like to do the matching t-shirts with one of the teams, we'd be all over that. May 3rd, it'll be outdoors at the Lunda Park, and if it is a rain event, it will be in the Lunda Field House. But I don't think I've reserved that yet. And we will be ordering food from Falls Meats, but the admin team will be helping to serve it. So it'll be through the line.
Very slow.
Surprise!
No cake.
Yeah, there'll be no cake competition. It's not a pulled pork competition.
Brandon wants to serve cake, that's all.
Perfect. So.
That's like 5.
Games start at 4, dinner at 5:30, and the program immediately to follow.
May 3rd.
May 3rd, Wednesday night.
All right. Okay, WASB, Mary Jo had right up in the packet.
Yeah, my report was in your packet, and then I also made a copy of this graph and talking about visual literacy earlier. This really spoke to me about our inflation discrepancies that we've had over the years. You can see from the funding actually has gone down since 2019 for public schools, and if it kept up with inflation. When we were telling our personal stories to our legislators, one story really spoke to me too, and I won't say what district it was, but it was a district near us, where a special education student had some higher skills, and so the aide was helping that student get some work experience out in our community like our schools do, and got hired by a wonderful company that we all know, Quick Trip, who a private business who can adjust according to inflation, and the student was getting paid more than the aide. That really spoke to me as like, boy oh boy, it shows that when school funding doesn't increase at a state level and doesn't adjust to inflation. And as we struggle with trying to just giving a raise without giving more money to meet inflation, where we used to kind of go with a CPI, and we're talking about 2% when CPI is up to 8. You know, it's just so hard. But this, when she said visual literacy, that really struck me as an important visual piece. So I just wanted to share that. Does anyone have any questions about my report?
Thank you for doing
And
that.
we continue to get a new director for WASB. John Ashley will be done in June, and applications were due last Friday, and the executive team was going through those, and we as a full board of 15 will make final interviews in April, and hopefully have someone on board so they can work with John throughout his remainder time. He's been with WASB for 16 years, so he's been some big shoes to fill. Anybody have any questions?
Are you going to apply?
And actually, you know, the requirements are just open. Like, you don't have to be a former superintendent. You don't have to. And John's, you know, such a wonderful leader. His degree is actually in broadcasting, but he could really relate to people and had a passion for increasing student achievement in Wisconsin. And he said he's not done. He's my age. So he's going to be 69 soon, and he said he's not done with his work, so I'll be interested to see what he does.
All right. Anything else? WSB conference or workshop attendance? School board connection opportunities?
Attended the Spirit Hearts, and it
Yes.
was just a fantastic experience.
That was good.
Really
That
was.
was.
And standards-based grading did meet, and it was a very interesting meeting because right now, the group is trying to align standards-based grading, you know, points 4, 3, 2, 1 to A, B, C, D, and how that works. And it's very interesting. And they're taking our ideas the ideas they came up with back to their peers and trying to talk about it. But there was no final decision made to see how those equate. And then the history fair is next week. I don't know, anybody get asked to judge?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think after my performance at the math fair, I probably didn't get it. But
I would do well.
you noticed that. And Mr. Pancake, right?
Pancake is on Thursday,
At what time again?
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
He's an uncle, not a mister, right? Uncle Pancake. He's-
Uncle?
he's- Probably could be a mister as well, but he's uncle.
So, you know,
No, a little closer relationship.
No, my.
Yeah, it's
my
not
cat-
breakfast time, Nick. Not breakfast pancakes. They're dinner
Usually
pancakes.
that's when I have breakfast.
Dinner pancakes.
Says Mr. in my cat. So. All right. Anything else? All right. Future agenda items?
This isn't a future agenda item, but we all got that letter that wanted something addressed at this board meeting. Didn't you?
We're not going to discuss
Okay.
that.
All right,
It's a closed session matter.
okay.
I apologize. I was supposed to, on the notes, put action needed, and I forgot to do that. Sorry. I will do better next time.
All right, if there's nothing more, we're going to adjourn into closed session. We'll take a short recess in between.
Roll call to go into closed session.
So I am going to move to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85, subpara 1, subpara C, for the purpose of considering performance evaluation data of administrative personnel. So, if you would, Marty?
Do we need a second?
Oh, yes, we do.
I'll second it.
All right, so now,
Mary Jo Rosmanowski,
Yes.
Mary Jo Radcliffe,
Yes.
Nick Helsted,
Yes.
Tom Epps,
Yes.
Ann Deemer,
Yes.
Brad Dobbs,
yes.
Troy Webb.
We should remind anybody watching about the school board candidate forum
Yes.
held this Wednesday, sorry, should have done that earlier, Wednesday, March 29th at 6 p.m. in the high school LMC. Now we
So we'll take, is 5 enough for everyone?